All right. So we talked a lot in the beginning about reading in a variety of formats. And, you may have been modifying the CES data, the ER heat related illnesses data, like all these data sets, and creating, cleaned and modified data sets. And I think it can be equally important as bringing the data in as being able to export it, to being able to create a file with the modified data. And so we talked a lot about readr in the beginning, part of the tidyverse, but there's equivalent functions to read and CSV and read delim, and those are write CSV and write delim. And we'll talk more about those here in this module. All right, so these functions are going to take a couple of arguments. They're going to take a data frame or a tibble that you want to write to a file. So, we have been creating these CES subsets. Maybe that's something you want to write to a file. And then you need to give it a file name and path, basically where you want the file to be located and named on your computer. So here are some examples. We're writing CSV, we're writing a tibble or a data frame called DAT, and we're writing it to a file called COER heat new names.csv, or, we could specify, if we want a specific delimiter that's not a column, we can declare that, right? So maybe we want tabs, or maybe we want slashes or something like that. That might be important if you've got data that needs to be formatted in a specific way for some downstream application. All right. So write CSV, we're writing files. So what does write CSV do? It saves data to what? Is it R's memory? Is it a file? Or is it saving data to a ggplot? What does write_CSV do? Yeah, I agree, right? It's saving it to a file on your hard drive, right? If we're working around in R, these are all objects that are saved in memory, right? We've been playing around with them, modifying them. They're in our environment, and it's not a ggplot, right? That's a little bit different. So yeah, it's saving a file on your hard drive. Okay, so there's a couple other formats you may be interested in. I definitely don't use these as much. They tend to be more important when you are working with, very time intensive tools or something like that. Maybe you want to save an intermediate object. So you can write an R binary file, which is a file that ends in RDS. And you can create these using write RDS and then read it back in using read RDS from the readr package. So they can be used to write and read back in a single R object. So you can, that could save you time, in terms of having to read it back in later. So let's say I wanted to save a binary file for the ER data set. I could save it with the .rds ending and the write_rds function. I could save something like a vector. That's totally fine too. And then reading it back in, what I want to do is read RDS, specify the file, and importantly, assign it a name. All right. So RDS is typically for one object, but you may be in a scenario where you want to export a set of objects for R to use later, to save time or to just put everything together. So you can do that with a .r data file. So you could use the save function for that, and then just stack up all the objects that you want to save, right? And then specify, a name for the file ending with .r data. So in this example, I've saved an object called X, an object called X2, and they're all stored in this file, which I could read back in. I can also save image to save all of the objects in my environment. So that would be all of these. Sometimes that's a little bit overkill. All right. So you can do this a little bit manually as well. So if there's an RDS or RDA or R data file that you want to work with, you can open it in your environment using the file icon. So that would be this one right here. And you can also save your entire environment or subset of those objects with that save icon in the environment. So you don't need to necessarily use code to do that. Okay, so as a reminder, we talked a little bit yesterday about data visualization and saving your ggplots to a file. You have a couple options here. So again, as a reminder, you can go to export and save image as PDF or a PNG file. You can right click on the image and save image as, or use code to save to a specific file name, specifying a plot that you want to save, and then specifying the dimensions. All right. And that's pretty much it. Those are the top things I think to remember or to be able to save content outside of R and save your work. So using write_CSV and write_delim are going to allow you to write modified data. RDS and R data files can be handy for saving intermediate work. Let's say you put together a large simulation into an object and, you don't want to have to run that again. You could save that as an RDS file. And then you can save the environment or a subset of the environment using save and save image and save for ggplots. All right. So first things first, we'll want to load the tidyverse package. It's going to have the readr package inside it for reading and writing data. And let's read in the CES data, Calendvirus screen data. Could just refer to this object that's already there, but in case I've made some changes, let's just read it in again. All right. And once we have that data ready to go in our environment, we'll want to filter the data set. We're making some kind of modification, right? We're filtering that data set so that California County is equal to Yuba. We'll store that modified data set as CES Yuba. All right. So we're going to create a new object, CES Yuba. And what are the contents going to be? It's going to be that existing data set. And we're going to filter for where California County is equal to Yuba. And so taking a look over here, right, if we run this, Yuba should be shorter, right? It should be a smaller data set. Maybe I only am interested in this data set and I don't want to have this big, thousands of rows of data kind of taking up space on my computer. I just want a subset. I'm just interested in this one county. All right. And finally, I want to write out this object as a CSV file, calling it CES Yuba using write_CSV. And actually, I realized I'm actually not in my project right now. So one thing I might do is save this and open that project. Let me get rid of these guys and open this back up. All right. So we did reading in the data and creating the subset. And then I've got my files here, right? So let's write out CES Yuba. We'll do write_CSV. And notice I'm not assigning this to any object. It doesn't need that. It's just an action that's taken. So I want to write CES Yuba. And I want it to be written to a file called CES Yuba CSV. And important that I have that CSV ending on there. Let's see if that will work. Great. I now have that object and I could take a look or import it again if I wanted to.